Now we're going to carry on our review of the World Matchplay. Come to the first of our two questions of the week, and it is, how would you rate the 2022 World Matchplay?
I thought, well, I guess this is just like the event 2 years ago, but the opposite. Because if you go back to the 2020 World Matchplay, there were a lot of really, really good matches in the first couple rounds. And then the semifinals were great. But beyond that, the quarterfinals were a little dry and the final was very one-sided. This time around, there were a couple good matches in the first few rounds. I mentioned one previously in the last question in Gerwyn Price, Martin Schindler. The Michael Smith-Andrew Gilding match lived up to the hype I gave it. Dirk van Dijvenbode, Ryan Searle was a fantastic match. But there were a lot of duds in the first couple rounds, some of which I mentioned, others which I don't want to waste time talking about. And it led to a very uneven and fairly long first few days because the matches just by and large weren't living up to it. But from the quarterfinal stage on, it was as good, if not better, than any event we've seen. Similar to the World Championship this past year, but the semifinals were a bit down, or at least one of the semifinals was a bit down in the World Championships, although granted one of the semifinals here was as well. And maybe also the Grand Slam from 2 years ago, which was just that quarterfinal day of the Grand Slam is still the greatest day of darts I've ever seen. And that entire last few rounds that week were just incredible. I think this quarterfinals on is on par because of the 7 matches, 6 of them were really, really good. The only one that wasn't was Gerwyn Price against Danny Noppert, and it wasn't because, by good I mean competitive, and it wasn't because they weren't playing well. It was because Gezi was unplayable in that. He only threw a 9-darter and almost threw a second 9-darter. The one letdown of a match was that one. The last 3 rounds of this event were incredible, and it made up for the fact that there were a lot of duds in the first couple rounds. Overall, I guess I'll have to give it a grade. I'll give it a B+, because a tournament isn't just the last 3 rounds. Considering how well everyone was playing going in, that there were that many poor matches in the first couple rounds, I think has to be dinged somewhat. But the event finished over the top, and in the end, we had a deserving final. The 2 best players over the course of the week in it, and they had a final that lived up to it, even if in the end, one of them ran away.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And we said in our preview show of the World Matchplay, it's a tournament that both of us hold in high regard. For me, it is my favourite tournament on the PDC calendar. I love the long format from the start. The venue, the Winter Gardens, that's my favourite I've been to. And I'm a fan of a weekend anytime in Blackpool as well. And funny you mentioned that 2020 World Matchplay, because I was thinking back to that one when I was comparing this event to previous match plays. And that one in 2020, that was the first TV event back after the lockdown. It was behind closed doors, and I did enjoy that one. Not sure if it was just the novelty of darts being back after that long break, but there were close games for most nights. There was a game or two that you'd remember, and apart from the final being quite one-sided in that one. But last year we probably remember it most for the dominance of Peter Wright more than anything. And although that was enjoyable to watch for me as a neutral, that the last 3 rounds there wasn't really any close games, and there was a fair few one-sided ones in the first round as well. But this year, it was more like that 2020 edition. That we did have the overtime games in round 1. We had Michael Smith, Andrew Gilding, Rob Cross, Chris Dobie. Rob Cross 8-2 down, coming back to win that one. And the second round, the game, Peter Wright and Christoph Ratajski, another comeback in that one. And for me, one of the best games of the year so far for me. That was a good one. I can't really comment on the Wednesday games because I didn't see them, but Jose de Souza, Rob Cross, that sounded like a cracker, both averaging 103 in that one. And good to see Jose de Souza playing well again on the stage, a player that we mentioned in the build-up as someone that didn't have a lot of form coming into this tournament, but it was good to see him get back to some form. And the quarterfinals, 3 of the 4 going 16-14, the Peter Wright, Dimitri Vandenberg game, that's one. I can't remember a game or many games like it that swung so many ways. Peter Wright getting off to that hot start, Dimitri winning 10 legs in a row, Peter Wright coming back and looking like he was going to win it, and then Dimitri holding him off, and what a last leg it was to win that one. And the Van Gerwen Aspinall game, we've spoke about that fight back from Aspinall and the brilliance at the end from Michael. Semi-finals as well, we had the 9-darter and Dimitri being pipped at the post by Michael in the other semi-final. The final, it was certainly entertaining, if anything else. So for me, I'd say it is a thumbs up for this World Match Play. Is it the best? I'm probably looking at a few others and got to cast my mind back a few years, but 2018, when Gary Anderson won the title, that final with Mensa that year, we had Jeffrey Desvan's run to the semi-finals. We had the Gary Anderson, Joe Cullen game. 2019 as well, that was a fairly good year. Rob Cross winning the title, that epic comeback against Daryl Gurney. And going back a few years as well, 2013 I want to mention as well, because we had that Phil Taylor, Adrian Lewis final, both averaging over 105. The MVG Lewis semi-final, we had the Whitlock Wade, Lewis Hamilton. I think they were the quarterfinals, 18-16, 19-17. So 2 games that went into overtime there, which were really enjoyable. But for me, for a week of darts, the match play rarely disappoints, and I thought this was another good year.